Hello, everyone. I really have a special guest. One of my dearest and best friends is here with us to talk about land ownership in Ghana. Just a brief introduction. This is an extraordinary woman. I wanted to share her with you because she has a wealth of knowledge regarding investing in Ghana. Some brief background about her is that she's the founder of a thriving audiovisual production company that specializes in podcasts, social media, YouTube, audiobooks, and more. She's also a certified yoga teacher and Reiki practitioner, sound healing practitioner that allows her to blend her creative expertise with a deep commitment to nourishing self expression. She teaches yoga. She's also a yoga to peer recovery specialist, working with formerly incarcerated citizens, facilitating self activation and actualization. Most recently, she's assisting women on their paths to fertility and motherhood while supporting those facing challenges such as postpartum symptoms and pregnancy loss. So I welcome you, Nana Kufor.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you so much for having me on this beautiful show that you created.
It's a pleasure having you. I reached out to Nana a few weeks ago because a client of mine was investing in land in Ghana. Well, I was speaking to her sister about it, and she's like, you need to speak to Nana. Nana really knows more about this than I do. And when I tell you I spoke with Nana, I was just like taking copious notes because she really gave me the rundown of things to look out for. And I wanted to share that with those viewers who are interested in investing in Ghana and have no idea where to start. She's going to walk you through the pitfalls and things that you need to know about. One of the things that annoys me, Nana, about investing is that the narrative around it is that you have to have exorbitant amounts of money in order to
Yeah.
invest. And so it discourages everyday people from opportunities that they well could have taken advantage of because of the narrative around, oh, I don't have $200,000 to it. Well, none of us do, unless we're a major corporation or we have venture capitalists or we have banks behind it. Most of us are everyday people living hand to mouth. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to bring this down to like reality, what the everyday person can think about if they want to invest in Ghana.
Wonderful.
So we're just going to jump into the question. So Nana, Nana's currently a landowner, right?
Actually, we'll talk about that. So kind of yes and no. I'm claiming it that I'm a landowner, but there's some dispute actually with regard to my land ownership that we should definitely talk about.
Okay,
But
good.
for simplicity, at least as we introduce this topic, I am a landowner.
Yeah, you are a landowner. So can you briefly explain how land ownership works in Ghana and the difference between the customary, what is called stool or family land and state land?
Absolutely. Well, I'll explain to the best of my ability because as you can see and hear, I'm still navigating this process myself. But there are families in Ghana that own land, and there are royal families in Ghana that own land. So for simplicity, let's just say family without getting into royalty right now. So the land ownership that is familial land goes back generations. You almost cannot trace it. It goes back as far as the settlements of the people in that particular area, hundreds and hundreds, even thousands of years ago, when kingdoms and empires were being formed and cemented. Those families settled on lands through the structure of whatever their lineage structure is and passed down the lands along those lines, those familial lines, those lineages. So, for example, Akans are matrilineal. They trace their lineage up through the mother,
Mhm.
through the maternal line, and in tracing their lineage primarily through the maternal line, because the framework is that we always know who your mother is. Father may be questionable, but no disputing who the mother is. So we trace the lineage that way. So we also trace property ownership that way. Whereas other ethnic groups and nations may trace it patrilineal through the father's line because of their customs and cultures. The Akan people, which include the Asante, which I am, say that because we pride ourselves and we prize so much our things the things that we're able to amass and then keep within the family and pass down is so precious and sacred to us. We want to make sure that that's tied to certain lineage, which is matrilineal. And then you have government lands. So of course, in the 1300s, first European invaders came, the Portuguese, and then the Dutch, and then the British, and so on. Well, not and so on, it ended with the British. And when they came, they started to encroach on lands. And so those lands were stolen. They're all stolen lands, but they became part of the colonial properties and in wars and fights. And then subsequently, as governments were formed, the government of the Commonwealth, the British Commonwealth was formed, there were certain lands that became property of the Commonwealth. Like, for example, where I sit today in my brother's home in a neighborhood called Cantonments in Accra, it's very near to the British High Commissioner's residence. British High Commissioner's residence, even to this day, it's still called that. That's still the property. And so it's still property of the British government, even though it's almost like a consulate now or an embassy. But
Mhm.
back before 1957, when we achieved our independence, many of these properties were owned by the British government and then passed down 1957 when we achieved our independence from Great Britain in Ghana, then passed on to the civil government of Ghana. And so Ghana has these properties that once upon a time were also familial properties. So that's the
Mhm.
division of property in Ghana.
Okay, interesting. So property can be owned either by the state or by familial.
Yes.
And so property is passed through the mother, even to this day, through the
Depend
lineage of.
it depends on the clan and the ethnic group, but it's either passed through the mother's line or
Mhm.
through the father's line. In a matrilineal situation, the father's easy because it goes from father to children, and then the children ideally marry.
Mhm.
If the women marry, then their children inherit whatever that their.
Uh-huh. Interesting.
And if it goes from father to son, then it goes from father to son to the son's children. So that's easier to follow. Matrilineal is a little bit more complex for people to understand who are not used to just sort of that nuclear family concept where the patriarchy is dominant. In matrilineal structures, the inheritance passes through the matriarch, not necessarily the mother. So, for
Hmm.
example, the property that would be divided to me and my sister and our children, our female children only, be properties that our grandmother, our mother's mother, also received through division, and
Okay.
her mother also received. So those properties get divided because we're going through matrilineal lineage. It keeps getting divided amongst the offspring of that initial matriarch.
I see.
So you're not just dividing it amongst your siblings, you're dividing amongst cousins,
Mhm.
nieces, then next generation. So as each generation transcends and goes back home to the ancestors, obviously you no longer have that property. You're no longer on the planet. Your descendants receive that property, but they must divide it. And so this is why land is so important, because it's much easier to divide land than it is to divide like a structure. When it's a structure, it's like, you're dividing rooms. So that's why a lot of the homes of our past, the traditional ancestral homes are compound homes,
Mhm.
complex homes, or what we call passenger houses with many, many rooms, because it's, not just, a nuclear family living there. It's all the people that descend from this one grandmother are
Wow.
living there. And then when they die off, or, in between, their descendants all have the right to live there. Yes. And it
Wow.
never leaves the family. So that means nobody ever is homeless. Nobody is ever hungry. You always have a place to go. So that's never really divided up. Those structures always stay there. But when you have that structure, you have the opportunity to rent. Say you don't need to live there and you're able to get some, money outside of the family. Then you might use that one room that you have and rent it out,
Mhm.
things like that to make money. But if you have land, now you can farm, you can make money from that land. So open land, especially farmland, tends to be divided in the same way that a house would be divided into rooms. It will be
Right.
divided into plots.
That's so interesting. So foundationally, a person from the diaspora or from the US, or you're wanting to invest in land ownership in Ghana, what do they need to know to avoid any pitfalls, like a first-time buyer, understanding that foundation of how land is passed on and owned?
Yeah. Oh, so many things. So you need to understand who's your seller, and do extensive research on that seller. The seller could be an agent, could be a real estate agent. It could be someone who has bought many properties, like a real estate investor,
Mhm.
from families, from, commercial entities, and is reselling them. It could be you're buying from the government. That's less likely, but you could be buying from a government entity. And so there would need to be some certification, some paperwork that designates the land ownership. In all cases, there's paperwork that designates land ownership. So you really need to know who you're buying from. You could also be buying from an Ohima, a king or queen of that particular jurisdiction, or some say chief, queen mother of that particular area. So you could be buying directly from the royal nobility,
Mhm.
or a member of. You
Okay.
could be buying from someone within a family, like the family structure that I talked about before. And in that case, you need to know that there's harmony and consent among the family members, not only in the selling of the land, but in the appropriation of the land? Is the piece of land that you're buying the land that was actually delegated,
Mhm.
given to that particular family member? So that's the first thing, is doing your due diligence on understanding who are you buying from, getting, identifying information about them. You know, now in Ghana, for example, everybody should have an identification card called a Ghana card. You need that to do everything, to even register a mobile chip, a mobile
Mhm.
SIM card. So before it was to vote, but now to have a SIM, people don't vote, but they have mobile phones, even the poorest
Yes.
people in Ghana. So everybody has a Ghana card virtually. So you should be able to get their ID and match it to who they are at the very least. Now, of course, they could be counterfeit. So you need to do more information. You need to seek out, go to, if it's, for example, land that's being bought by a family, go and talk to the family members. One thing about Ghana, and I think Africa at large, I can say, which is beautiful, is that you can literally just walk up on
Mhm.
people's homes. It's not like Europe and, other parts of the
Mhm.
West where you got to make an appointment. You can go run reconnaissance, go to the area, start asking questions. No one's going to be like, why are you asking? They will be curious about why you're asking questions, but they'll understand, because land purchasing and land ownership is such a hotly contested, controversial, and sometimes dangerous um, situation here. And so people are very willing to hear you out and help you discover, who's the family behind this land. And that is very, very important. Or who is the reigning traditional ruler of this land is also incredibly important to know. And the reason why is because you want to get them involved early too, to oversee. A lot of times, even this is the thing with Ghana and a lot of African countries that are treading the line. And this is that post colonial BS residual legacy that we have to deal with, where we have to contend with. I mean, in some ways, it's a beautiful thing, the interplay between traditional laws and civic laws.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it's not always black and white. It's not always clear. There are gray areas because there's true jurisdiction and rights that are handed to traditional jurisdictions, to laws and rulers and
Mhm.
citizens. And then there's also, the general legal code of Ghana,
Mhm.
and they run up against each other. And so lawyers here as well are very, very needed to be a part of that process. But I think what is as important as seeking a lawyer early, and not everybody has the money to hire a lawyer. I think what is as important, and sometimes more important, is you yourself doing that reconnaissance, engaging. Local people, if you have friends, colleagues who are Ghanaian, getting them
Mhm.
involved because they know much more of the lay of the land, asking them who's who. One thing about Ghanaians, we're very nosy. Everybody knows everybody in an area. If you start naming names, they'll tell you if that person's really from there or not. So doing that initial research, and especially going to the kings and queens that rule those areas, is pivotal. Actually, that's a step that I skipped, and I'm Ghanaian, I'm supposed to know better. I skipped this step under false guidance. We'll talk about that too. But and trying to be a little bit maybe more independent than I should, having a very Western mindset and bringing that to my ancestral homeland. But yes,
Mhm.
going to the people that know more and actually have authority to give directives, to sort out disputes, those are the kings and queens of the jurisdiction. You need to go to them early, because when they know that you want to buy land, they can immediately say, oh, this land is actually for me, or this is it. And even though we have the Lands Commission, that was the point I was getting to earlier. I was trying to get to earlier when I was talking about the relationship between the civic government and traditional government, is we do have a lands commission. We do have, a federal government office that, administers, or it's supposed to administer, the divvying up of lands. However, it's a little complicated, because what I did was, and interrupt me if you have a question as I'm rambling on about my situation, but what I did was, when I worked with my surveyor,
Mhm.
my surveyor went and did a search. He searched? Well, he went to the land first. Drew up the land,
Mhm.
the demarcations of the land based on the negotiation between myself and the seller. Went to the Lands Commission to look up that land, to do a search on that land, and the land was supposedly free and clear. It had never been registered. They call that freehold land. So it's
Mhm.
never been registered by anyone. And I was led to believe that that's wonderful. It's freehold. No one owns it, so you can go and buy it. No, that's possibly worse, because in my view, because now that means I'm buying it from someone. Somebody has to register it before I
First.
can register it. Right. And because it's not my ancestral land, I'm not the first person to register it. Whoever owns it first must be the one to register it. And that hadn't been done. So before we get into the meat, nuts and bolts of that, the Lands Commission does have some information about the ownership of the land, but it doesn't have always the information.
Okay.
It doesn't have all the information. So you need to do that search. Like that search did need to be done. But then what
Yes.
I also needed to do was run reconnaissance in the town and ask questions about the seller, ask questions
Mhm.
about the names that were on the document to say, do you know these people? Have they been selling land, et cetera, et cetera? Because what I found out is that once somebody raised their hand in the family and said, wait a minute, that land wasn't supposed to have been sold, I realized that that information that I should have sought initially was readily available. I just didn't go out to seek it.
I see. So a person interested in purchasing has to do the reconnaissance as well as the civic system. They have
Yes.
to do community relations, speak to people, speak to the
Yes.
chief, and then do due diligence with the land commission.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
really the initial first step before any money is exchanged.
Oh,
S
absolutely. Before a dime is exchanged, don't spend a dime based on anyone's promises to you. And of course, there are people too who are known to sell land and they're very well reputed. They might have reviews on their land selling. They might have a lot of international clients and stuff like that. Those people exist too. And there's going to be far less of an issue buying land from them, but you still need to do research to find out that they are valid and that they do have the reputation that they're claiming online or whatever, or that you know someone who really bought the land from them and had a pretty seamless process, these middlemen and women.
Okay. Okay, so a buyer can confirm the person selling the land actually owns it by speaking with the chief, speaking with the queen, and dealing with land commission. And
Yes.
they both taking this method can verify that this person has the authority to sell.
Yes. And it might not be a
How
quick process, by the way,
how
though.
can they is there any reticence with trusting the chiefs or the queens? How do you measure that?
That's a great question. I would say no, because everybody knows who's the chief and the queen. That's the
Okay.
thing. So it's less likely that someone, I mean, it's very highly unlikely someone's going to purport to be the traditional ruler there. I mean, that is extreme fraud. That would have to be a very deep con artist because you can easily verify who the kings and queens of the town are. A lot of times nowadays, you even see them on Facebook and stuff with technology.
Okay.
So, and because it's easy to confirm who that person is over here in Ghana, we don't play with our traditional rulership.
Okay.
Yes, of course, here and there you hear about some funky fugazi things happening, but for the most part, there's so much integrity and dignity that's part of that position. They gained that position ideally and probably most likely through a rigorous vetting process where there were kingmakers and consensus made. Over here you rule by consent. You don't just become king just because you inherit through your lineage. There's still, other people that are eligible. And so there's going to have to be a selection process. And usually there are other kings and queens from within that family, sub chiefs, and other towns sometimes that are part of the process of choosing you. So you've been vetted. You have a great reputation. You have the consent of the people. Not out here trying to mess that up. So
Okay.
yeah, so that's why it's so important to get them involved. I would even want them involved even more than lands commission, to be honest with you. Like when you get them involved, people respect, the royalty here. They
And
and
they're
and
different.
and also because a lot of the times the land sometimes is consigned from the traditional rulership. Not always. Sometimes it's family land that's not tied to nobility, but sometimes it is. And so if the land was sold off by lands that were owned that were property of the kings and queens, it's much easier to trace, to confirm, like it's their land, and they would also receive a cut of a commission.
To be fair.
Yes, yes, for any land sold.
So the chief or the queen, within their position, there's a lot of integrity and trust, and they're not going to violate that. So a person going to the king or the queen from the outside who's not native to Ghana can trust in the guidance of the royalty.
Usually, it's most likely to be trusted. What you hear sometimes is that unfortunately, there are sometimes corrupt traditional rulers. They're selling land maybe and trying to sell it without giving the rightful portion to the king. Because we have chiefs. We in our language they're all kings, but then we have the supreme ruler, especially in Asante. That's the Asante Hene. He's the king, and everybody else was a king of their own land before we all decided to form into one nation and swear oath to one king. And so anytime a land is sold off by in any of the other towns that are under Asante, the Asante Hini is still supposed to receive his cut. So, maybe one of them, King's Queen, may try to sell some land and short the Asante Hini. He hears about it. That's a different issue. But it doesn't mean that he wasn't supposed to sell that land. It's still typically he or she, it is their land to sell.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So what documents should a buyer request and verify before purchasing?
I don't have all the answers to that. So one of the things I would love, and I would love to help facilitate that, is probably for at some point an attorney, a Ghanaian attorney to provide, or a member of the Lands Commission, or both, or a surveyor to come on and give more of the totality of the process. But what I will say that I did was, upon the advisement of a family member, was I needed to hire a surveyor. So
Mhm,
my cousin, by the way, is and was my real estate agent. We immediately pulled in an experienced surveyor,
mhm,
like I said, and then I insisted upon great advice in having in seeing the initial sale document,
mhm.
because the person who was selling the land to me, it was obvious that he bought the land. Like, that's not his ancestral land.
Okay. Mhm.
Yeah, he was purporting to be, like almost like a trust fund baby or whatever, and he's going out and buying lands and selling them. He's
Okay.
developing, he's creating estate homes and stuff like that as well. So I bought land from him, and I needed to know where it was bought from. So I needed to see the original sale document, and I also needed to create a contract with him before engaging officially in the transaction that said he's going to sell X land to me. I'm going to
Mhm,
pay X money to him, and this is the name of the person or family or whatever that he obtained the land from. And this is the area of the land that's all demarcated
mhm.
in with the assistance of the surveyor. So it's two things: seeing the initial sale document, which I believe you can get from the lands commission, and you should work with your surveyor to, if there's an initial document available, if it's not like completely, land that's never been exchanged before, that you see that document, and that you also create a document between yourself and the seller before you actually give anybody a dime.
Okay, so the chain of title, that's I guess what we would call it in the US. So you needed to verify from who he purchased the land.
Yes.
Well, it was not his own ancestral land. But you said
Yes.
he purported to be that it was his land that he inherited?
No, no, he did not do that, but he was presenting himself as someone who comes from what we say in Ghana, like a big family, like
Uh-huh.
a wealthy family, and that, he just has the funding, has the finances to go out and buy land.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you needed the original sales contract where he purchased the land that would be recorded at the lands commission. Then you
Yes.
needed an actual contract between him and you.
Yes. Yes.
How trustworthy, but you mentioned this, how trustworthy and reliable is the lands commission? Because you said not everything is actually recorded. And if it's land that has never had, that's just been passed on through family, there may not be any records at land commission, correct?
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the interesting thing. There was a contract. You're such a great lawyer. There was a contract that I saw. It had some information in it redacted. It had like signatures redacted for some reason. But yes, at the Lands Commission, it's shown to be freehold land. So what that shows me was that the person who sold it to me, kind of the same situation as now, because right now um my, what do they call it? The land title
Mhm.
is probably not at the Lands Commission because we've not finished the execution of the land sale,
Okay.
and I'll explain why later. But so that initial sale previous to mine was not registered with Lands Commission. It was probably genuine. Like, they created the contract. It was the land title was supposed to then go to the Lands Commission, and there probably was a problem at that point, which is why there's a problem now with me that I
I
didn't
see.
know about, that I believe the seller knew about and didn't tell me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, so yeah, so it's not that you can't trust the Lands Commission. It's just that because the process is so convoluted, the all transactions are not immediately recorded at Lands
Okay.
Commission. A lot of there can be a lot of land turnover before it ever gets recorded at the Lands Commission, in multiple
Not unique
cells.
to this is not unique to Ghana, though, so I want the viewers to know that the US still has land that has not been recorded because there
Mm.
was no history of chain of title. So, essentially, no man's land
Mhm.
because no one has purchased it. It
Yeah.
may not even have a block and lot number, which is the tax description on a map. So a person now going to purchase this will have to have it surveyed, have a block and lot number established based on the neighboring properties, and then that be recorded and then the purchase. So this is not unique to Ghana per se. This can happen in the US too. That's
Yeah.
why there's well, on the US side, you do a title search to see the
Mhm.
actual chain of title to see if anything was broken up as the land was transferred. So this is fascinating to me. So you believe that the seller knew there was some discrepancy in terms of
Yes.
recording with the land commission and wanted to like hot potato the land to you?
Yeah, I think so. So that's a very good observation. I think that's exactly what happened, because he was starting to act funny, kind of bullish, almost as soon as he got the money. And it's because my surveyor and my cousin, my agent, were pressing him for the details that they needed to register the land with the lands commission so I could be registered as the first and rightful owner.
Mhm.
There's some, just I don't know what it is. It's exactly probably like the name of the seller, some numerical codes and stuff like that that he needs to provide to the surveyor. And he was not being forthcoming with it. And it's like, wait, what's the deal? I bought the land, you got your money, we did the pre-contract, now we've done the land title, we've signed the land title. Why are you tripping? And what it seems happened was that the hand that was raised to us was initially raised to him. Like, wait a minute, this land shouldn't have been sold. By another family member came in and interceded and said, wait, stop the presses. This particular plot was not supposed to be sold, right? Is what I believe. I think he was already aware of that and was trying to stall and resolve the issue without telling me,
I see.
without telling me.
So he perhaps bought the land in good faith. I thought he bought it in good faith, but
Possibly.
it wasn't supposed to be transferred to him, and that's why he couldn't record it when the time came. Okay, we're speculating, but
I'm
some
speculating, but that's what I do suspect happened, and that he didn't want to be forthcoming about that and was stalling and doing a lot of delay tactics and saying he wasn't ready to record the land yet, which made no sense. So
Exactly.
because he was acting funny, we went around him, finally doing the reconnaissance we should have done. Well, what actually happened was my cousin slash real estate agent Nana, she said, you need to do something on the land quick because the land was open land for the most part, and you need to put something on this property, claim it so that somebody else doesn't try to buy it again
Right,
when
yeah,
you own it. And so we started to create a fence. We were gonna create like a foundation fence, cement fence, and stuff like that. And once you start doing that, and if someone brings somebody to that land, they'll question it. Like, wait, why is there development happening on this land?
right,
So it helps to prevent even more complications.
right,
And we also wanted to do it to go ahead and start getting our farm up and running and secure the land. And so once we started doing that work, there was no road going to this land, and this land is on in the mountains and itself is on a high incline. And so there was no initial road going there. So I had to spend money to grade a road, and not tar it and pave it and all that, but just to have, an excavator push the bush out and create a temporary dirt road
how
going to
much
the
does that
land.
cost? Just give me an estimate. How much does that cost?
How much did that cost? That cost me a few $100, US dollars.
Less than 1,000?
Yeah, it was less than $1,000. Let's say $500
To grade how much? How
to
many
grade, like, let's
how
say a
many
quarter of
yards?
a mile
Oh, okay,
from the bottom of the hill to the top of the hill.
okay.
Quarter of
But
a mile, half a mile.
not cemented, but just to excavate the land so a road
Excavate, and,
so a
and pack the land so cars could drive on it.
okay, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
continue. So your cousin told you you had to go to the land to
Yeah, so we
make
did all that, and then once the work started being done, people start talking, and someone came and said, "That's, my family land. I don't think this land was supposed to be sold." While my cousin was there, so I'm in the States. My cousin slash real estate agent slash farming partner is there doing the she's on the ground, my field, soldier. Somebody came to her and while they were doing all this work and was like, stop the presses. So, she called me and she said, such and such is going on. And I was like, all right, well, let's stop the presses. Stop the presses
right.
and find out what's going on. So that's when we discovered that indeed it is land that was purchased from that family. But long story less long, it seems that the family members sold, and this is not uncommon, sold the wrong plot.
Okay.
So they were entitled to a plot. Again, remember I explained how land gets divided amongst family members who all descend from the mother.
Mhm.
So they have this land. They probably had it forever. It's been raw, undeveloped forever. And now they decided that they're going to divide it to provide some means of revenue generation for family members. You could do whatever you want with it, build on it, whatever, sell it if you want to, which a lot of people do, especially this area, which is, highly coveted. So the wrong plot
Plot.
was sold to him. He sold it to me. And now there needs to be some restitution
Right.
because it's the wrong plot was sold. Maybe that person didn't even want to sell their land. Maybe they wanted to give it to their children and their children's children. Now it's been sold. So they have a family dispute to settle and we have an issue to settle. And so to fast forward, I'm in Ghana right now. One of my biggest missions is to resolve this issue, work with the family. I've done a lot of reconnaissance since then because I've also had to do some research. Is this even true? Because anybody off the street could walk up there and say, this is my family's land. How do I
Yeah.
confirm that he does come from that family and this family is the family and all that? So my surveyor had to pay him some extra money to do some, you know, street going around canvassing to get some information as well. Like, who are these people? The name on the document. Do you know this family? Oh no, this family did. This is their land. Like almost everybody said, yeah, we believe this is their land, but they don't live here. They live at Nsawam. And Nsawam is like, a half hour or more away, 45 minutes away. They don't live on their ancestral land. So now we got to go find them. So he went to the family head, finally found the family head, the Abushia Penny in our Akan language. So the family head is saying, yes, this is our family land and there's a problem. It shouldn't have been sold. And so, we
So
got to figure out what to do.
can I ask you, I don't know if you know this. So that dispute regarding the land that was sold, did that exist at the time it was sold to the man who sold it to you?
Great question. I don't believe so. I still need to go and visit them myself.
To
All the
see what it
conversations have not happened with me present. It's been my representative, my cousin, the surveyor who've done
Mhm.
work when I was in the US. So I need to be there because I'm getting a little bit, become a little bit of a telephone game. But what I believe is that there was no issue. It's just that they discovered there was an issue once the land started being developed by me that, wait a minute, it's been sold off when it shouldn't have been.
the wrong plot.
It's
Okay.
the wrong plot. And so what has happened since then is that now the family, the original owners have registered with the Lands Commission. So now when you go to the Lands Commission, it's no longer freehold land. When you go and look up that land, it shows that that land is owned by this family.
Okay. So where has the seller been? Has he been cooperating regarding this?
He's been an asshole, and so we've cut him out for now because yeah, he's just for some I don't know what's wrong with him. He has a personality disorder or what. So we've been going around him and dealing directly with the original family to
Okay.
find out what do they want, even though it's really not my responsibility. It's his responsibility. I paid the money to him. Needs to resolve the problem, or I can go sue him. And then he can decide if he wants to sue somebody, right? And that may have to happen. But because I really want this land and I really want to resolve it, and a lot of times here you can resolve problems by talking to people, simply
Right.
talking.
Absolutely.
Like we still have a very community based, family based. Again with traditional rulership, things get settled typically by speaking
Right.
by, in this kind of arbitration we do here. And so just go to them and say, hey, I'm a Ghanaian. I'm a little wet behind the ears. Went and bought this land. You see, I'm young. Play a
You
little bit to the,
humble yourself, right? You
you
humble.
know, yeah, I want to play the harp a little bit, pull the heartstrings a little bit and say, family elder, look at me, your child, your grandchild. Oh, like help, okay, I bought this land. And then he might say, okay, well, we didn't get paid for the land because the problem is the person that sold the land to him, I'm sure the money's already gone. He's probably eaten that money,
He's in
done whatever. It's the money
friends
never
with the
lasts long when these people sell the land. Yeah. So
to
he's not
friends
going to
wife,
have the money to restore to the person who sold it to me. That's probably
right?
part of the problem. He can't go and get that money back from him. And now he has
Uh-huh.
my money. He may have also spent my money. So that's why he's acting like an idiot. He don't want to talk to me. He don't want to deal with me. So I'm not going to deal with you either. Go deal with them and see what can I do? How can we resolve it? Do y'all need another $1,000? Will you just, that kind
Yes,
of
to
thing.
make this better. Okay, so Nana's father is also a chief. So I would like to hear how he weighed in on this.
You should have involved me from the beginning. Uh, that's another story. He's not wrong, but he is because I did tell him that I wanted to do, and this is why I say I went a little rogue. I did tell him that I wanted to buy land, I wanted to farm. He didn't take me seriously because I do all these things. I'm a lifelong project manager. I am a yoga instructor. I have a multimedia production company. Now I'm doing this. So he's like, "Well, what are you doing now? Now you're gonna be a farmer?" He didn't take me seriously. And I'm always serious when I'm gonna do something. As you can
Of
see, like
course,
I register companies, I go out there and do the work, like I do this stuff. And he didn't take me seriously because he doesn't understand. He comes from the old school British colonial rule where you're an accountant, you're an accountant.
for
You're this,
50
you're this.
years. Tell them
So
there's no pension and there's no 401k for us. We have to be entrepreneurs.
thank you. And this is my ancestral homeland. And I want to move and shake out here. I want to create
Yeah.
legacy here for my offspring, should I have them, and also the general progeny, my nieces, my nephews, and the children of Ghana that I'm not related to, that I have a lot of things I want to do for. So he didn't take me seriously. And I said, bump you, I'm going to do it by myself. And I worked with my cousin, who was his niece, and we, put our heads together as young Ghanaian women. We're like, we're going to do this. We're going to show these men, we're going to show these people. And then we ran into trouble. And so then I was like, Daddy, help, I need you. Can you talk to him? Do you know who the chief is over there? Da, 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 da. And he doesn't know the chief over there. They're from a different
Yeah.
nation, a different ethnic group. He does know a lot of chiefs from a lot of different,
Hmm.
constituencies, but he didn't know that person. He wasn't sure. And so long story short, I needed to run a reconnaissance again with my surveyor and even my cameraman, my director of photography for the documentary I'm working on, weighed in and volunteered to help me and went to this remote town to run reconnaissance, like just trying to double, triple check. We're trying to find out who's the king here. Long story short, everyone's like, there's no king. There's no like the areas in the eastern region is the Akuya Pim people. They are Akan people too. We're very related. We're like the same people that just went to different places. Speak generally the same language with a different dialect. But they don't have one king. I thought everybody has one king. Apparently they don't. There's like no Akuya Pim Hini. So they have, disjointed rulership. And then for certain lands, there's no king that owns it.
Really?
It's just like the family. I did not know this. So there's like nobody that I can go to as the authority figure of that town and to sort of like create a hearing. Like I wanted to appeal, tell him what's going on, for him to call the family in, call the seller in. If he says we're going to have a hearing on this day and I'm summoning y'all, his word is bond or her word is bond, depending on who's reigning, because women have a lot of power here as well. But apparently that's not an option for me.
So when did you find this out?
I found this out this year. When I came back from Ghana in January, my DP was like, "Oh, I'll go out there and help you and see what we can find out." And they asked questions. And then my cousin, my partner, and also my agent was like, "See, I told you, like, there's no chief there. Like, we tried too. There's no chief there. So you really got to deal with the family head. Or if
Okay,
it's
so
not royal land, then you got to deal with the family head. And this is who we have determined to be the family head." What I wanted to do was, I was like, how do we know that's a family head? Where is the documentation that says that's a family head? And I wanted the chief to be able to verify that that was a family head. Because I'm like, I need to know who's who. I don't know who's
right.
who. There's names, but there's no ID. But now that the land is registered and there's a name on it, I feel better that this truly is the family head, because he was able to go to the lands commission and register that land as their family land. So that's actually to my benefit now.
I see, yes.
So that's why I'm saying sometimes the freehold land is probably even worse. Like, you think you're free and clear to go and get this land. I feel better now that that land has been registered by the same family that my surveyor has been talking to and my cousin have been talking to in my absence. So
Okay.
I can go to this town, and so while I'm here, and talk to him and just find out what's overall. Am I going to get this land or not, yo? Like, are you going to let me get this land? Is there a different land next door to the land that I'm supposed to have that we sort of need to figure out? And he hasn't been paid, right? Because as the family head, maybe he's supposed to get something that he didn't get from the relative that went rogue or whatever, So
Right.
do I need to just make him good?
Make him okay. So what you said was so interesting about the surveyor's role, because in the US, the survey just measures.
Not here
Yeah, the surveyor facilitates public relations too.
with a additional incentive.
Additional course.
Yes,
So what's also wise for someone interested in purchasing in a certain region, that they get a surveyor familiar with that area too,
oh,
who understands
yes,
the families and the dynamics, not someone from the outside who's traveling because they're an
yes.
outside.
Yes,
Okay.
that's just so astute, Mariam. That's his area. That's his zone. He works there. He wears his boots. He's there. So I had looked at other land too from another potential seller, and he did the research, and he was like, this land, like part of this land is registered to someone else, not the whole
Mhm,
land, but like one plot is registered to someone else. I would
mhm.
avoid this. This looks messy. So yes, he's an advisor. He knows enough about the law. It's a much bigger role that the surveyor plays.
Interesting. That's so interesting.
Yeah, and also the reason why he's doing this work, to be clear, is I paid him a deposit. He gets the balance once I get the land.
Right.
So he has incentive to help me resolve this.
Okay, so as you talk about that, like, we can move on to fees, like how much this has cost you to do due diligence in the beginning before any funds are transferred. A buyer wants to spend some money on their surveyor and some other things. So speak about that. What is the typical
Yes.
cost?
So um in terms of like the land itself, that's a crapshoot. What
Yeah.
the land's going to cost. What's the sell price. You can try and negotiate. Negotiation happens at every level here in Ghana, so you can do that. But in terms of what the land costs, it could be anything. My land, I'm not afraid to say, costs about 6,000 US for a farming acre. A farming acre is 6 plots, whereas a residential acre is 4 plots. Because I specifically bought the land for farming, the contract says farming, it's indicated farming. Our negotiation was for farming. If I was buying it to build a home on, he would have sold it to me for much more. But because
Okay.
I'm trying to farm and that means I have to invest money and all this stuff, he sold it to me for less. However, the bill of sale, the land title is for the same amount of time. So I don't know why, what's the premise behind selling it less or more. I still have the land for 99 years.
Okay, so in terms of the land commission, the distinction between agricultural land and residential land to build, will that be a distinction at the land commission that, oh no, this is only agricultural land, you cannot purchase
Yes.
to build residential. So you would be prohibited from doing that.
Yes. I mean, I can put some things like small structure on there, like obviously
They're
like a
not apartment
farmhouse.
building.
Correct. Now, do I want to break the law? People probably do that, but no, like technically, no, I'm not supposed to do that.
Okay. So you will be prohibited at land commission. This is only agricultural land. You're forbidden from
Yes.
building residences.
Yeah.
Okay. So we were talking about fees, sorry.
Fees. And so the fee to my agent slash cousin is typically 1/6, I believe. Again,
Yeah.
this is where of the land. So
1/6 of the value of the sale price?
yeah, so either I was going to give her one plot or give her the money for one plot
So
for her work to get me that land.
so the sale price, say it's 6,000 US. They use CDs. Right now it's about 14 CDs to 1 US, right?
Yes.
So 6,000 so you were supposed to give her 1/6 value of your purchase price.
Hmm.
Is it customary that the agent gets 1/6, or does that number change?
I think more or less. I mean, that's the way it was described to me, but I'm not sure. That's an area where I'm a little murky, but that was what was described to me. Because she's my family and we're also partners, she was like, I'll give it to you on the strength. But I decided that I wanted her to have one plot. Yeah.
Okay.
So she will have one plot that she owns that she can earn revenue.
So an agent sets the estimated 1/6 value of the purchase price, and then
Mhm.
your surveyor,
Yes, my surveyor, I'm kind of converting everything to dollars. So I would say my surveyor's fee was like 700 US.
similar to here,
Yeah, like if I look at the city to city conversion, yeah,
that's similar to here, okay.
yeah,
And then what else? He does the research with the land surveyor? I
he
mean,
does
with the
the
land
research.
commission?
That's
That's
literally it. That's literally it in terms of fees. Now, of course, I have no legal fees, but I may soon. I haven't looked into that yet. You know, I have family members who are lawyers who, you know, I will be tapping, but legal fees could come into play, and I don't have any information about that.
okay. What
Yeah,
about notarized? What about once you successfully figure out the chain of title and you have a valid deed and that's recorded, what is the recording fee? Or does it notarize? Does it
it's
have a
yes, all of that has to be done, but that was included in the surveyor's fee. So the surveyor gave me a flat fee that encompasses all of this.
so the surveyor
And
plays
that's
the
why I only paid him a sorry, that's why I only paid him a deposit because some of the rest of it happens later.
okay, so the surveyor plays a really crucial role. Public relations, verifying the land documents, going to see, reconnaissance, verifying with land commission, doing the plot,
Doing
recording
the
the
plot,
plot,
putting the post up on the borders of the boundaries of the plot. Yep.
and then actually drafting the documents for you to sign.
Yes.
Okay, so a lawyer does not do any of this unless there's litigation or there's disputes where you
I
have to
think a
take.
lawyer might do it if you commission the lawyer, though. I think there's probably some interchangeability between those roles. But in my case, because I did not engage a lawyer, there was no lawyer doing that. The surveyor did everything.
Wow, that's remarkable. That's good to
It
know.
is. He's wonderful.
So you're really working hand in hand with a surveyor.
Yeah.
So once you get your land certificate, how do you verify that it's authentic?
It wasn't, well,
Well,
once I
you
get,
sign
I don't have the land certificate yet.
once you get it,
Okay.
how do you verify? Well,
It will
say
have a
you're
lands commission. I saw the one that was supposedly done before. I've seen them. So it will have a stamp, an
mhm,
official seal by the lands commission, but you also need to, you know, you can take it to the lands commission, like literally go and walk there. It's not a phone
uh,
call. Go to the lands commission office where you bought the land. So there's the headquarters in Accra, but then there's land commission offices all over Ghana where you bought the
mhm.
land and just verify that they have that same information in their records.
Okay, so the seller presenting you, here's the land commission document, the land title. You can go to land commission, verify that it is authentic. Okay.
Correct.
So you've been through quite an ordeal. This is so interesting. What would you say are the most common land scams or fraudulent practices you encountered?
This is a common one. Like, actually, one of my family members has done this to someone. I'm sorry to say. So I have no problem saying it because everybody, like, if you're Ghanaian, you know that's par for the course. You got some, at least one, you know, crook
One
in the
scammer
family.
in the family.
1,000%. Like, even if you come from a great family, somebody in there is a crook, wayward, you know, God bless. Did the same thing, was rightfully appropriated land, you know, in a division of lands to our
Okay.
branch of this matrilineal arc. And
Sold the
what
wrong land.
happened was sold the land, cut out other siblings, namely my mother, who was also supposed to get some of that land, but is abroad. So not privy to all the things going on,
Right.
and cut them out and sold the land without informing her and took all the money. So
Oh,
now when she becomes aware, if and when the family member becomes aware of the fact that land was ever given by the head of your family or the, you know, chief or queen mother in your family, which is going to be your relative, if they ever find out that that land was given out and it's already sold and you've already chopped the money, what are you going to do? You going to
mm.
sue your brother? You can. People do that, but that's a common one. That's a common, and let me tell you, people get killed. Murder rate and all that's not high, but one thing that will get you clipped quick is these land oh,
Land.
yes, is these land schemes. I know people who have died, unfortunately, well, one person, let me not exaggerate, but I've also heard stories of people that have died because of land disputes and stuff like that. People don't play because it's familial land. It's supposed to keep going and going. This is money, that is tied to familial land. You just don't do that. And people do it and then, suffer the consequences, or there's curses laid on your,
On your
progeny for
family.
to the end of time. Yeah. So
Uh-huh.
it's not done lightly because
Uh-huh.
of these consequences. But I would say that that's the most common one. And then also people pretending, like just people off the street. Like in my case, the person who sold the land to me, I don't think that was the case. I think he wasn't just like a complete charlatan, but there are people that put on a suit and tie. They ain't got land from can of paint. They have no land. Pretend
Right.
to have land and documents and all this. And if you don't do your due diligence, you are buying land that does not even exist, or it exists, but they never had a claim to it. That one is even more common.
Yeah. Yeah,
That one
yeah,
is
yeah.
even more
Because right
common.
now, there's so many people in the diaspora that wanna move to Ghana, that wanna purchase land, to feel connection to the motherland, but there's so many pitfalls. That's why I'm glad that you're speaking about this. Are there any specific regions or districts in Ghana where buyers should exercise extra caution?
In the area that I am purchasing, I would say yes, right? So that area is called there's so many little towns and they all have their names, but generally speaking, in the mountains, the eastern region mountains outside of Accra, we're close to Ebri. A lot of people are familiar with Ebri, especially if they've been to Ghana, the Ebri Mountains. The properties in that area are highly coveted. It's in the mountains. The climate's cooler. It's just like, there's a lot of, well-to-do people that live there and want to buy there and stuff like that. And the property prices keep going up and up. So, I would say all the hotbed areas are where people want to be careful of because that's where the charlatans move in, trying to
Mhm.
take advantage. But just generally speaking, I would say anywhere in Ghana, people want to, be careful,
Okay. What I thought was interesting, I didn't tell you what happened with my client. He's still in Ghana now, so he went to see the agricultural land, but it was a 2-hour drive through virgin land. There was no road. So the road had to be excavated and plowed before anything could even be done to the land. Like
Mhm.
nothing would be able to get. They had to travel, I think, on like mopeds because cars, let alone trucks, could not pass through. So it
Yeah.
was a wash. And I said, what could have been? And he was speaking with the chief. They were all speaking with the chief. But I'm like, how did this get missed? Because with agricultural land, you need to be able to get to the main road, especially when you're dealing with produce. You need to be able to get to the main road quickly.
It can't be hard.
It can be hard. So a 2-hour journey through virgin land of unpaved
Yeah.
road, it's almost like, how could this not have been anticipated?
You know what I think it is? Ghana is just become so popular, such a, hotbed of tourism and repatriation of African peoples all over the world. It is a developing country that is rapidly developing, though, especially
Hmm.
in the metropolitan areas, particularly in and around Accra.
Hmm.
And, there's been a lot of publicity,
Hmm.
informal and informal, a lot of YouTube creators and travelers and tourists creating content around Ghana all over socials, not just YouTube. And it's really attracted a lot of people to this country. And it's a wonderful thing. And as people keep coming here and they fall in love with Ghana, a lot of people want to live here. A lot of people want to invest. And especially for people in the diaspora, which I very much understand, whether you are a descendant of colonialism on the continent, colonialism and transatlantic slave trade in the Caribbean, and in the UK, or transatlantic slavery in the Americas. We have not had for centuries and centuries access to our own wealth. We have so
Right.
much wealth. There's so much wealth in the places that we come from, but it's been kept from us. And so now we're starting to gain access to a smidgen of it. And
Hmm.
and it's exciting. It's an excitable concept. And it's causing people to jump the gun. Even I did a little bit. Like I did a lot of research, asked a lot of questions. My brother is a developer. So I asked him a lot of questions. I consulted with him. I'm like, what do we need to do? You go and buy land and you develop on it. And he gave me all the information, but there were still some things he didn't think to say to me or whatever. So, if you don't even have relatives with that knowledge, that
Right.
industry, sectoral knowledge, and then also people, in your circle that are as connections, like a network, you're even at a further disadvantage. Sometimes there's a language disadvantage, especially if it's not an Anglophone country like Ghana and you're a French speaker or a speaker of another language, then you have that too. Ghana is a peaceful country. It is a country that has relatively free and fair elections since the year 2000. It's growing rapidly, and people are just excited. They're like, "This is a place where I can develop. It's safe, it's peaceful, it's relatively safe for women compared to many other countries, especially the United States." Like, I'm not even comparing Ghana to other African countries developing. I have to compare it to the world in terms of safety,
Yeah.
crime, and all these different things, and investability, and especially if you're interested in agriculture. So it's very understandable that people would be excited, but you can't rush.
What I also think is a lot of the media attention regarding Ghana, it's for high stakes investors because that's so seductive. And so a person looking at that content who cannot absorb the risk that a developer can absorb or that a corporation can absorb, like even you get the information from your brother, you can take it for structural information, but he can absorb more risk than you can. And as small fish, we have to know what we can absorb and mitigate those risks by being even more thorough. Because he could say, I lost $50,000. It's all right. Me,
Exactly.
no, like
Right.
that's
Me collecting
insane.
all my savings, exactly, you know what I'm saying? $6,000. I actually had this great, because 'cause I'm a small business owner, right? Like, I'm an
Right.
entrepreneur. So I was like, "Okay, well, I do have this money, but the truth is, like, do I really have it? Yes, it's in the bank, but should I be spending it?" But I was like, "This is an opportunity I can't pass up to get a farming acre." 'Cause I've always wanted to farm, to be able to establish myself as a farmer, create food and
Right.
opportunity for my people is something that's very, very near. Whoops, sorry.
It's okay.
I put my phone on do not disturb for 1 hour. Let me put it back on do not disturb, and I'll restart my sentence. Yeah, so for an opportunity to create food and wealth and opportunity for my people, it was something that was really, desiring of. But you're right, I did not have that money to lose. And so this is
Right.
why I'm fighting for it, because, like, it's possible that I've lost close to $10,000 because I spent the 6,000 on the land, the fees, and then I started developing. I started putting up a fence, all the materials and stuff that I bought, the cement, the this and the that, the grading of the road, all that stuff. I probably spent close
Right.
to 10,000 US. And yeah, I am a small fish in a swampy pond, and I don't have that money to lose. So yeah, thank you for making that
Yeah.
point. This is an
Yeah.
advisory.
This is advisories that some of us cannot fly too close to the edge, and there's nothing wrong with that for now. For now, get your feet wet, take your time, do due diligence. Opportunities will always be available, but you
Yeah,
always want to say, I went into this with as much good faith and as much research as possible. And if it does not work out, okay, I did the best I could. Another, you know what I mean? That type of faith, but also there's a saying, I think it's in the Quran, like trust in God, but tie your camel. That type of
exactly.
awareness of vigilance. Like, you do everything you could possibly do to be as thorough and careful as possible, but then you do have to have faith in God.
Exactly, and know that there are other opportunities too, right?
Yeah.
Because you can also invest in a co-op. There are programs out there. Khalees has one in Kenya
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
Tanzania. I think it's wefarm.com. Like, there are opportunities that have already been established by non-celebrities, by vetted corporations and stuff like that, where you can just invest, $100, $500, subset of a plot of land, and you still can invest. And it's
Right.
very low risk, and is well protected by a cooperative instead of going solo in a country that you don't know and stuff like that. Every investment has some risk attached to it. I didn't go in blindly. I knew that it was risky. I heard all the tales, and I decided to go ahead and take that risk, but you got to be careful.
Yeah, you have to be careful. Again, it's about managing the risk and what you can absorb and still get on with your daily life so it's not like eating you up inside. In terms of foreign ownership, I know there's legal restrictions as to a foreigner buying land. Can you speak to that? Because are you Ghanaian citizen?
I'm a Ghanaian citizen. I'm a dual citizen.
Okay, so speak to that.
I'm a dual citizen, and in Ghana, you have to, if you're purchasing land and you're not a citizen, I'm almost positive you have to be in partnership with a citizen. So you can do it, but you just have to be in partnership with one person who is a citizen versus where, someone could also decide to become a citizen. Citizenship is a viable pathway for of any lineage, as long as they're black. As long as they have African ancestry, you can get Ghanaian citizenship. I don't even know how they prove you have African ancestry, but you can do it. A lot of people do it. Some people go that route, and then they're citizens, but you don't have to be to buy land. You just have to have a partner.
Okay, so a non-citizen can purchase land with a citizen.
Yes, and purchase, of course, I mentioned this before, it's really a lease, technically,
It's a leasehold,
a
right?
long-term lease.
Okay. For what is it, 50 or is it 99 years?
Some will say 75 years, some will say 50 years, but typically it's 99 years.
Okay, so that's also an important distinction is that lease is used interchangeably with purchase or sale. You outsider, a US citizen or even European purchasing land in Ghana is actually purchasing a leasehold.
Correct.
It's not a sale. What else would you? It's not freehold. Well, we use freehold differently in the US, but you're
Mhm.
not actually. Well, ownership is used interchangeably with leasing land.
Yes, exactly. The term buying, purchasing, and leasing are used interchangeably. Rent is not. So if you say rent, it means rent
Okay,
in
that's
Ghana. So no one would ever say I'm renting the land, even though that's what they're doing, because it's a long-term
yeah,
lease
okay.
slash sale.
So can a leasehold can that be passed on as well? So a foreigner purchasing land with a Ghanaian, how do they establish inheritance based on that?
Great question. And this is again where I would say a lawyer comes into play, but the same thing you would need for any inheritance, right? You would need a will and trust. Same
Okay.
thing here. So if there's no establishment of who's supposed to inherit your land, if for some reason you meet your demise before those 99 years are up, that's something that you would want to establish so that it's very clear and seamless transition of ownership or lease title from your self to your successor. That is so important.
So Ghanaians readily do wills and
Oh,
trust.
yes. Oh,
So
yes.
okay.
Yes, we do wills, and certainly if you're from out, if you're a non-citizen, you definitely want to make sure that you also have a will because it's less. If someone's from here, it's not typically challenged unless one of your family members decides to challenge. That could happen, but like, let's say I am able to claim this land that I bought, and then I don't expect to live 99 years. Again, more than my current age. I'm 46. I'm going to die before the lease is up.
Mhm.
And, should I have children or like, a niece or somebody to give it to? No one's really going to fight that. That person will go to the land, take over. Probably nobody will really fight it. But if somebody wanted to, they could challenge that person and they would need to produce documents that they are my
Mhm.
successor.
Okay, interesting, interesting. So wills and estate planning is readily discussed among Ghanaians.
Well, I won't say it's readily discussed, but
A priority.
it's a priority and it's definitely done. Like, it's definitely not like people are leaving it to chance. Like, when someone dies, the first question is, was there a will? Where is the will? And there's
Oh,
typically a reading of the will 1 year after the person's death because of the way our custom is to bury, have our ceremonies, mourn for 1 year, and then after the year, you open up that will. That's almost become not almost. It's become part of the tradition. The legal aspect, the will reading, is a thing that happens a year later. So, it is readily discussed. It's discussed in association with this subject of death.
interesting. And there's so many Americans that have land, that have property in the US and still are reticent to have their affairs in orders. But Ghanaians are even more proactive than Americans. That's so
Because
interesting.
of this issue, like this is such a controversial issue, and unfortunately a recurrent issue that people become more advised to have wills. Yeah, I think that sometimes people die without wills, just like anywhere, but people be having wills here.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So, practical advice, long-term consideration. How important is it to physically visit the land before purchasing? Is the surveyor enough to be your hands
Mm.
and feet on the land?
Come here. Do not buy the land sight unseen. I mean, gosh, unless like you have a partner and your partner, I don't know, like if you're high net worth person with a high net worth partner and you're doing some sort of business and that person is going to come here and somebody has to see it. Somebody that
Mhm.
you trust has to have seen the land, but preferably you, especially if you're like an independent person with just your own personal funds and it's not like some commercial venture, come and see the land, especially because of what you said. Like I went to all these lands. I went into some of these snake invested areas and went to the land to see, is there a road going to the land? I want to farm. I have a project in mind. I'm not just going to buy land just to buy land. My family has enough land, so I maybe one day will inherit land. But
Mhm.
I want to do a project in a specific place. I needed to see if we can access it, how far it is from the main road. Is the incline too high? I also
Right.
worked with a farming company, a company that provides resources and microfinance to smallhold farmers, to have somebody go to the land too to see if it's proper for farming, to test the
Mhm.
soil for the
Mhm.
crop that we want to plant. Not only did I go to the land, but somebody who was, well versed in farming and agriculture went to the land. I
Mhm.
was able to see that there's a poly tank, there's a water reserve tank on the land. That told me that there's water under the land. So you also need to get some, especially if you're going to do agriculture, someone to test that there's water. There's a water table where you want to farm, and that there's not like some boulders that you're not going to be able to dig through to get to that water table if there's no pipes, no water coming to that land. So you got to go to the land, and then you got to also do that kind of research too, whether you're doing farming or it's going to be a residence, because you still need water, you still need all these things.
Yeah, a feasibility study, I
Yeah,
guess.
is there electricity there? You're gonna have to live off grid. Some of these lands are off grid. Like your friends 2 hours from nowhere, that was probably gonna be all off grid.
I
Yeah.
don't think they anticipated it was gonna be at the way I was because I think I remember asking this question, "How close is the nearest highway?" It's there.
Okay.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah, no, because you don't even my land, I will say, like, it's a little bit of a trek. Like, that road going up Ibri, it's a mountain. It's a little trepidatious. Like, I'm like, I don't know if I wanna drive there. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, yeah, I could just live there and stay there, but I wouldn't want to be going up and down that hill every day. So at some point, I would have to build something small that allows me to live on that land and live within the villages and stuff like that. I be coming to Accra maybe once a month because I don't want to really go up and down that hill. Certainly, I don't want to be the one driving. So you have to think about all that. Are you going to be able to hire a driver to take you back and forth to wherever you're going to live or work? Where you're going to buy
Right.
that land? Is it on a cliff with no guardrails? Is it scary to drive at night? Is there lighting? I mean, all of this stuff you have to look at. Yes, this is
Exactly.
my reality.
Yeah, because I was like, the videos that I was seeing before they went was like, "Oh, yeah, we're just driving with a pickup truck and down a dirt road." Okay, I get that. But then once he landed there, it's pitch black.
Yes.
The truck can't go anymore. You have to use mopeds for transport. I said, "That's a 6 for a 9."
Yeah.
That's a 6 for a 9. That's why visiting the site is really, really important. Do not
Visit the
purchase land
site.
sight unseen.
Yes. Visit the
Yeah.
site, walk up to the site. That's the other thing. I did visit the site. I saw the land, but because there was no road going there, like we couldn't drive there, right? And I was
Mhm.
tired because I had looked at so many lands by then that I was
Right.
like, oh, I can see it. There's the poly tank. I want that land. I hadn't walked up. When I finally walked up the first time, I was like, golly, this is a hike.
Yeah, exactly. Mountainous regions too.
Yeah,
Right.
walking from the down to the up is no joke. Like, gotta be fit. You know what I mean? Like, I'm fit and I want to stay fit, so I don't mind the fact that it's a bit of a hike. But if you mind that,
Yeah,
so
and we're not
really,
accustomed to that,
yeah.
essentially. We're not accustomed to that.
Yeah, yeah, it's an adventure. Buying land, period, is an adventure. Buying land in Africa, buying land in Ghana, buying land in a rural, remote place in Ghana. Add the compounding layers. It's all an adventure. If you like adventure, do this.
Exactly, exactly. Let me see. I think we got through all the questions. Okay. Okay. Here are some risks. We touched upon it earlier in terms of why someone wants to take additional precautions. One of that being inflation, the fluctuation of the Ghanaian CD, which is the current currency. Can you speak about that?
Yes, I can. So when I purchased the land, city was about $16 to 16 to 1, 16 cities to $1. So
And that was in
$1 purchased you 16 cities. Yes, was that 2024? I think it was 2023.
Mhm.
$1 purchased you 16 cities. It was like that for about a year, year and a half, and now it's then, maybe a couple of months ago or at the top of this year, we're in 2025, so at the top of the year, it was like 10 to 1. So the value of the dollar dropped substantially, so one of the things I had to consider, and my partner, my cousin, was very helpful with this. She reminded me about that. She was like, "Sis, you know what some things you're gonna have to do. Some of the purchases you're gonna have to make those now before the city drops. Sorry,
Mhm.
before the city strengthens and the dollar drops because you're spending dollars. Yes, I'm using Remitly to send to her, and it's converting dollars, my dollar bank account, into her city cash out. And so I'm glad I did that. So even though fencing the wall, sorry, for my land has not been completely constructed, rightfully so, because I need to work some things out before we spend another dime. I have bought all the materials. So that's the other risk. Like, I may lose the land and I have all these materials. Well,
Yeah.
I can sell them. People will buy them, but I might get it for less than what I bought it. So that might be a bit of a loss too. But I also bought the materials because the city changes so much. So it's like you got to weigh that too. And it's not so predictable because, the strength of the city is not only based on the administration here, on the way that the country is being governed, is very, very tied to the global economy.
Okay.
The US sneezes and the world catches a cold type thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so the CD could be volatile because right now, as of this interview, I believe it's 14 cities to $1.
Right. The dollar is strengthening against the city now.
Right.
It's a dilemma for me because I'm such a flag bearing Ghanaian. Like, I bleed red, gold, and green. So I want the city to be strong. But I benefit right now from the city being weak because
Yes,
I'm
I
bringing
mean, we
dollars
all
in.
do benefit from the US currency, and I think that's also important to I understand there's a lot of noise out there from people in the diaspora about the US, Europe being evil and
Hmm.
wanting to distance themselves from the West. Girth and the robustness of the West is what's helping a lot of economies, allowing us to take our monies out of the US and Europe and invest in developing nations. So that's
Hmm.
also important. Like, you make that money in the US, you're not making it anywhere else. So it's sort of like learn to appreciate that US dollar that allows you to have more options outside of the US rather than totally feel disdain for the US.
I agree. I agree because we also, like, I'm trying to figure out too right now, full disclosure, like, where else I should be putting my money. Right now, I have dollar bank account and have city bank accounts. I think I need some yen, some Chinese yen, maybe
Yeah.
Japanese yen. I need some what do you call it? Some British pound accounts, like,
You do.
black
You do.
people, especially Americans, with the way this country is going, need to start thinking about other, banks that have a global footprint.
Yeah, definitely think about euros. Definitely, because the euro is always gonna be strong. I mean, Germany alone holds up the whole European Union on its own.
Yeah.
So, it's not black and white like it once was, like the US dollar is like the almighty dollar. It's about using what you have from the US to build something, to
Hmm.
bridge the knowledge, the skills from the US, the structures, the efficiency to build something in another country, not
Hmm.
dismantling and burning everything down. What
Hmm.
can you take and extract? There's a lot of gold in the US to extract to build upon. And that
Hmm.
is one of them because the US, if we follow its footprint, it has its hands in everywhere. That's what's propping
Everywhere.
up US economy. That's one of the reasons why it hasn't tumbled down because a lot of nations are propping up the US. So, currency fluctuation is something that one has to pay attention to
Yeah,
and be aware of.
that's a big one.
Yeah, that's
You
a
could
big one.
potentially lose like maybe 50% more money based on not making sound, savvy, strategic decisions about when and on what to spend your money. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then the lack of price regulation with things like real estate, you did touch upon it earlier that
Yeah, what I'm noticing, and some other Ghanaians, like, true born and bred Ghanaians, unlike myself, who is a, descendant of immigrants back in Ghana, have also been talking about it. They deal with this economy on a day-to-day basis. The price gouging is out of control. The variability of pricing across the same commodities,
Mhm,
whether it be real estate, whether it be the price of oranges, it's all over the place. And part of the reason of that is that there's some lack, I think, of education or maybe just ignorance around pricing. And so people are greedy because they're seeing a lot of money coming into the country and they want to get as much of it as possible and not really understanding business and commerce, and that, you might be able to price something high and have a flash in the pan
mhm,
in a moment. But if you keep pricing like that and people get to know that that's what you're doing, no one's going to buy from you. So some of that's going on. And then the ramifications are being felt by the business owners, by the merchants, but it's also being felt by the everyday Ghanaian because there are a lot of people coming in with foreign currency, dollars, euros, pound sterling. They're chomping at the bit because the prices here, even though they're expensive in this context, is very inexpensive to them to
mhm,
purchase and invest. Even a home,
right,
$1 million home in Ghana is $100 million home in Melrose. You
mhm,
can get that same home, on the beach front, sprawling, all that kind of stuff, the finest materials for, 1/100th of the price. And so if you have that kind of money, it's going to be very, desirable to you, and people see that you have that kind of money, and so they're pricing some of their products and services vis-a-vis some of the money that they're seeing coming in. They're seeing the Rolexes. I mean, it's visible, and they're benefiting. A
mhm.
lot of the merchants are benefiting from all the tourism and the investment. But on the flip side, the everyday Ghanaian tend to suffer, especially over time. You're seeing it not only in Ghana, you're seeing it in Mexico and a lot of places where there's protests because now the housing prices, the food prices, are, they're precluding the everyday Ghanaian from access to the things that they used to have access to, or some of the things that they hoped to have access to one day that they no longer do have access to. So the middle class ceiling is rising too
Right.
fast
Mhm.
for the everyday person. The middle class is rising relatively fast, though, especially compared to a lot of other countries here. Make no mistake. But the danger of the price gouging and of the foreign money coming in and the way that the local economy tends to respond to the foreign money coming in is this.
Yeah, and you know what I think it's unfortunate is that the locals tend to blame the outsiders, but it's not the outside. The outsiders may have the money to pay for it, but they're being exploited too because the price
Exactly.
should be this. Just because they could purchase it doesn't mean they're not being exploited.
It's such a tenuous, tricky situation because I feel like I'm somewhere in between. I'm an outsider,
Right.
insider, right? I'm Ghanaian. I'm one generation removed from, an indigenous Ghanaian. And I have not only lineage, but inheritance here.
Right.
On the other hand, I was born and raised outside of this country. I have lived and worked here before, but it was for a short period of time. I'm born and raised outside of this country. And so, for all intents and purposes, I'm an outsider who is a Ghanaian citizen with legitimate claim to this country, but very much viewed as an outsider in many other respects. And I sometimes feel exploited as an outsider. Like, I'm like, this is not supposed to cost this. And I know it's not. I mean, it happens to me all the time because even though I'm Ghanaian, I step outside the house, no matter how I'm dressed, no matter what I have in my hair, no matter if I open my mouth or not. they just immediately know I'm not from here. They know. You can tell the difference between the people that lived here their whole lives and someone like myself who was a child of Native Ghanaians. And so I'm being ripped. They try to rip me off all the time, and sometimes I'm ripped off, and sometimes I'm no. A lot of times I'm knowingly ripped off. Like I expect it, and a lot of times I'm down for it because I'm like the people who are providing this service, these products, they work for it. They deserve to be paid more. I would pay for it. I would pay X over here, and having um, that knowledge, right? Having that awareness, I feel like a hypocrite and like a betrayal to my own people if I'm paying them what I know that they don't deserve. But at the same time, when I do, this is a funny thing. My relatives who are born and raised here, they also get pissed when I pay more. They get mad at me because they're like, "You're bringing the price up for us.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
paying this amount of money for the tomatoes or this amount of money. Now you're bringing the price up for us. Don't pay that." So I'm
Yeah.
like, I want to pay more because they deserve more. They toiled for this. And they're like, no, because you're effing up the price for us. So truly, I'm supposed to be trying to pay what the market price is. Well, what is the market price for someone like me? Yes, I do get taken advantage of. And at the same time, I sometimes feel like I'm taking advantage of the people. It's a dicey thing.
It's interesting. It's interesting. But what also it can create instability as
Yeah.
well. Even though you can pay it, you know you're being ripped off. It creates, even for a business, as a small business owner, like sometimes you're flush and sometimes it's a hard guava season.
Mm-hmm.
You Once you're in business for a long period of time, you know how to mitigate those difficult periods. But someone who may not have the education to withstand when it's difficult periods may get overly excited because it's flush and not know how to have reserves when times are difficult. So I almost think like it's sort of like you giving your iPhone to a 2-year-old. They're just gonna
Mm-hmm.
be like this calling Africa. Da, 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 da. They don't know how to hold that type of wealth.
Yeah.
And so unless like there's education along with the money coming in, it's
Yeah.
sort of sand through the hour. Like you said, you hand the money, the seller to the original seller who purchased the land,
Mm-hmm.
whoever he bought from, that money is spent because it's not enduring. It's like
It's
a
not
dope.
enduring.
It's a
It's a dopamine hit. There's not been, like you said, that financial education about how to reinvest, how to make
right,
this money work for you. And there's also less opportunities, less vehicles, mechanisms available to the average Ghanaian to create more wealth from an investment. Like, they don't have a Robinhood app that they
right.
typically can put 100 cities in and let it grow. Yeah. I mean, those things do exist, but it's not as available to them.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's sometimes like too much money in the wrong hands. A person can self-destruct. You think about like the lottery winners. 95% of lottery winners within 5 years regret winning the lottery because they
Mm.
spent everything and then some. And, of course, that's like an exaggerated situation, but
No,
it
but it's a
has,
great example. It's
yeah,
a great analogy.
yeah, about like someone who doesn't have the vessel to receive more money. It
Hmm.
can be just as destructive. It's not necessarily helpful.
No.
And that's what your cousins are telling you. It's not helpful on a large scale. They get the dopamine hit. They're like, yeah, 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 I got over. But then what happens tomorrow?
Yeah. Yeah,
You
it's the
know?
difference between giving somebody a plate versus teaching them how to farm.
Hmm.
And yeah, if you don't have that foundation, you don't have income coming in all the time, you can get a big wad of cash, but it'll be gone that fast. Even if you don't blow it, it'll still be gone that fast because you don't still have income coming in to
Yeah.
replace it. Yeah.
And you don't have the wisdom to be a steward of this income. So
Yeah.
the wealth that's being invested in Ghana, how much of it is actually being poured into the infrastructure? Or is it just everyone building mansions?
It's kind of closer to the latter. Well, I mean,
Right.
I know you're giving like extreme examples on either side of the spectrum, but that's such an astute question as well. Right now, we are in an extended rainy season, probably as a result of, continued climate change. Our rainy season was typically from like June to August. Now we're in mid-October and we're still getting monsoon rains. Everyone's like, the rainy season was never this long, but it was happening. It's been happening for the past couple of years that I've been coming to Ghana. I've been seeing that. And this city, Accra, which competes with, in my view, that's why I'm here and I'm loving it, just about every major metropolitan city in
Right.
terms of the access at a certain income level, caveat, to quality living. I mean, this is an ocean front city. This is a coastal city. So you have the beach right here. You have a myriad of top tier, almost Michelin level. Like if Michelin would actually come here, a lot of our restaurants would get that star.
Oh my
One,
God.
two, and three stars, like full stop, like all of that. Incredible entertainment. I went to an incredible, like Vegas style lounge with a live band, cover band. I mean, the performers were top tier. Like it competes in every way in terms of just having a great quality of life. And even if you want to live a luxury lifestyle, you can live it. And at the same time, we have a drainage problem.
Right.
We have a sewage problem. When it rains, parts of the city that are below sea level always flood.
Mhm.
Today, my father sent me a WhatsApp video warning me of parts of Accra not to go to. Today. Now, I'm sitting, like I said, close to the British High Commissioner, which I recently learned from my brother is the highest point within the original across city limits. So of
Mhm.
course the white people built their house on the hill where
Of
nothing will ever affect them and they can look down on everybody else. And this is where I am today. So we're not affected by the floods. This is a well-to-do area. So the power's always on. We're not getting these power outages every other day like everybody else is getting them or every day. The water is always flowing. You
mhm.
don't need the water reserve as much here because, of the influence of the people that live here. A lot of the embassies are here and stuff like that. So the infrastructure is disproportionately, meted out across the city and across the country. Not everyone is experiencing the same Ghana.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So where you are and in Accra, the more metropolitan area of Accra will have the best infrastructure,
The wealthier areas
the
will have the
wealthier,
best, yeah.
but it's not
The more
universal.
touristy areas as well.
Okay.
Mhm.
So that's a concern for someone relocating to Ghana to know that it depends.
It depends, absolutely, and it's very clear to see when you come here, you can tell which neighborhoods are better developed, like, it's very visible,
Mm,
certain neighborhoods, you look like you're in, Santa Barbara or something like that in California, literally. Like, the streets are paved beautifully, things manicured, there are sidewalks, and you have other places where you don't see that, you don't see as many lighting poles, to light the streets at night and stuff like that, and it's known where the tourists are and stuff like that, and so those areas are pretty well taken care of, and where there are a lot of expats living and a lot of foreign nationals living. Or the neighborhood that I live in, which is far from where I am now, I'm at my brother's house, which is more in the sort of central, the heartbed
mhm.
of tourism. Where I live is more in the industrial area, like the new industrial area across Spintex Road, close to the airport as well, but on the other side, the east side of the airport. That area is very Middle Eastern. A lot of Iranians, Lebanese. There's a
Right.
cafe where you turn into the street that leads to my house. I never see Ghanaians in there. I only see Lebanese people in there.
That's so interesting.
It's almost like, are Ghanaians allowed in there? I don't love it, to be honest with you. And that area, you hardly ever have a power outage or, those issues because of who lives there. So, yeah, these are the people, a lot of the people who are, driving a lot of different industries in Ghana. And so they have influence because a lot of the businesses they have are, integral to Accra being, a nice place to visit or a great place to invest in.
Okay, so why hasn't that spread out to other like, is it the government's incentive to spread it out to the rest of Ghana, or is it the millionaires that are investing in Ghana to say to the government, "Listen, we need this."
It's a great question. The time will come. It's just like I think what happens in every nation that develops over time. Ghana is a baby.
Mm,
Ghana was born as Ghana in 1957. We have to remember both my parents were alive when this country became the country it is today. And then there have been several different forms of government since then, right? This,
I
we're talking about the Ghana since colonial rule, but then there's been coups, there've been military governments, there've been so the first free and fair elections were in 2000. So I always want to, create that caveat before I start dumping on my country because what you're right. Well, your question I think is leading toward the right answer, if I may, which is that it is the government's responsibility, but the government has a lot of work to do. And the
mhm,
governments, change sometimes every 4 years. Our election process and timetable are very similar to the United States, so it's two term limits of 4 years. And, when change of government happens in these young democracies, it can be sort of like a wiping of what the previous administration has done and almost a blank
yeah,
slate starting from scratch again. We're still getting to the point where we understand that continuity is important. And I'm starting to see that as a visitor. I'm a Ghanaian, I'm a citizen, yes, but I come and go. So I still know my place in terms of my commentary on Ghana.
right.
And but I'm seeing it more continuity from one administration to the other, even if there's, a change of party, or you're starting to see one build on the other, that it's not helping the country for you to just abandon these projects and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the more that happens, I think the better things will be. Centralization of development in and around Accra, I believe is a byproduct, is an unfortunate byproduct of colonial rule, where everything was centralized in Accra. They made Accra the capital, and this is sort of like the legacy. We
mhm,
didn't change the capital after they left. We didn't change the borders after they left. We left
right.
everything as is. If we had our own way, this country would have different borders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of dynamics and politics that goes into it. There's also a lot of corruption. Make no mistake, there's a lot of corruption in Ghana, as is in many countries developed and otherwise. And this is something that I also think we will overcome, but is a big part of that too. But the money is here, and where there's a lack of oversight and there's corruption, the money will just stay here. Who from other areas, towns, small towns, is going to be able to bring the money to grease the hands of the corrupt government elected or appointed official to get them to do a project in their town? You know what I mean?
Right.
So it just keeps the work happening, the benefits in the hands of the few. But the reason why I believe we're going to overcome it, and the reason I say that we have to look to the other countries that have had their chances, France, et cetera, to develop over, centuries
Mhm.
and centuries, is that they went through that too. They went through that them eat cake period too. And you see
Right.
what happened when they said let them eat cake. So
Right.
things are going to come to a head. And so the corrupt leaders and the oligarchy here are going to have to ask themselves some tough questions about whether they want to suffer the ramifications of this large gap between the rich and those who have much, much less, even though the middle class is rising, or if it's not, if the development not happening fast enough, if the decentralization, the
Mhm.
dispersion of wealth and resources doesn't happen fast enough, people will get frustrated. It's happening. Will, the everyday Ghanaian be okay with the pace and the rate at which it's happening so that we can develop all together? Time will
Right.
tell. But I will say that President Mahama is from the northern part of Ghana. President Akufo-Addo, who preceded him, was from the eastern region of Ghana. And so we've had a pretty dramatic change of administration, change of ethnicity at the top level of government, which, enables different people from different regions to sort of benefit from, okay, now the northern region may get more support now that Mahama's in, hopefully, you know what I mean? It's unfortunate that sometimes it has to be that way, that you kind of take care of your own before you take care of the rest of the country. And I'm not accusing Mahama of that or Akufo-Addo, but because we are seeing change of government, I'm encouraged that we will get there hopefully a lot faster than France did.
Of course, of
Yeah.
course. Do you also see, like, the US administration, the good, the bad, and the ugly, also encouraging that change, where Ghanaian has to look within their walls saying, "Okay, we can't rely on the US."
It's so interesting. I do. I see the a couple things with the recent advent of dramatic change in the US and what appears to be the fall of an empire, the
Mhm.
beginning of an end, is that yes, its tentacles, its influence, its reach is diminishing to the benefit though of other emerging powers and existing powers like the Russias, like the Chinas and the BRICS coalition and all of these things. So there's more choice among Africans and African leaders in terms of who they want to negotiate with. It's not all about just the West anymore. And in addition, financially, like politically, there's going to be less influence, and of course, politics is tied to money. Like the U.S.'s economy, is not doing as well. There's ebb and flow with respect to that, but there's an incredible amount of development and investment happening on China's part here. And
Right.
Russia has been very active and overt in influencing a lot of Francophone countries in helping them kick France out
Absolutely.
and assert their independence. Now, is that creating a proxy war? That remains to be seen. But yes, I do think that this is the time for Africa and really the whole diaspora to take
Mhm.
advantage of this moment, claim more and more their independence, like Burkina Faso has done, like Niger has done,
Mhm.
like Mali has done, and band together and connect their resources and their
Right.
skills and the brilliance and the brain power of their people to develop amongst themselves and not be reliant on foreign powers and external influence, which has continued to cripple us over generations.
Absolutely. And what's also so interesting? There may be naysayers that are like, "Oh, there's no opportunities to invest in Ghana." They may not be aware of how many nations, like you mentioned Russia, you mentioned China, also Turkey, India, other countries, quiet as it's kept, are pouring millions, if not billions of dollars into Ghana in terms of direct investment as well as in the infrastructure, but just, larger scale projects that we can't as individuals imagine. But that's also the hope that
Mhm.
for people who are discouraged and don't see opportunities there. It's not gonna be overnight, but there's a plan in place that's happening.
Yeah, there is a plan in place, and then sometimes I do question, like, how robust is the plan, but my view is that there's a great opportunity. We might not be
Yes,
part of the plan, but we can leverage the opportunity.
exactly, exactly. In terms of I think a lot of what's happened with, the US administration that's going to help motivate and encourage more investment as more distrust develops from other nations from the US, they're gonna say, We're gonna start investing in Africa."
Yeah, and brilliant minds are here. Really, like, incredible some of the best architects come from
Mhm,
Africa, the
mhm.
best engineers, and unfortunately, over the past several generations, they have been developing other countries. These
Right.
brilliant architects and engineers and doctors and stuff like that have been going to Russia and to the UK and the US and Germany. All these countries have been benefiting from us, but we continue to generate brilliant minds and creative minds and artistic prowess. And so the more and more of that stays here, there's no way but up
Yeah.
for Africa.
Well, thank you, Nana, for all of this information. What a lovely discussion. You went
I
from
loved this. How my land misfortunes have somehow turned into a great conversation is just no. I'm not claiming that. I'm just joking.
yeah.
I'm gonna get my land. Don't worry, y'all. Whoever's listening, just pray for me, but don't feel sorry for me. I'll be fine. I'm gonna get my land. But yeah,
But what a story. My God, it's so fascinating. But it's a cautionary tale. We are each other's keeper. So if you
yes.
can give knowledge to someone to avoid the pitfalls that you experience, I'm sure it'll be so helpful to the
I
next person.
hope so. I hope so. I want anyone and everyone, especially from our diaspora. I'm sorry, I have no bones about being incredibly biased toward us, to
Hmm.
come to Ghana, get their citizenship if they want to, get get a claim a piece of the land that they rightfully deserve that's been taken from them, and let's work together and continue to have conversations and continue to be culturally mindful and spiritually mindful of one another and our different stations in life and build community with one another as we do it so we can grow together at our different income levels and different spheres and build a better future in all of these countries throughout the diaspora.
Absolutely. Building our own economy,
Yeah.
essentially. I think yeah, that's what Nana is so adamant. She's the one who actually said, yeah, I think everyone from the diaspora should own land, if not Ghana, then in the continent. That's like, I never thought about that. I never
Yes.
thought about that. And it's possible. People are doing it. All right, Nana, let me stop it.
Okay, babe.
Wait, let me say goodbye. We didn't say goodbye. Well, Nana, I'm going to put Nana's contact information if you want to reach out to her. Again, she's a Reiki coach, yoga instructor, sound engineer, and she teaches people how to build their own sound studios and the
Yes.
sound engineering studios and
We do
podcasts.
post-production work. We do a lot of podcast production work from A to Z, production, post-production. And I recently got my doula certification. So I'm gonna start helping women through their laboring process and helping midwives and doctors and
Oh,
beautiful people, families bring babies into the world and supporting not every, I mean, I can't boil the ocean, but supporting different aspects of that experience for
okay, so
families.
go list.
Yeah, I call myself a portfolio entrepreneur because I have added multiple things into my portfolio. So my company is called Sound Easy. We're at www.soundeasy.co, soundeasy.co. We are a multimedia production company producing audio and video. So whether that's podcasts, video books, meditations, online courses, video podcasts, YouTube reels, shorts, Instagram reels, just think anything audio, video, instructional, creative. We can do that. We also provide live switching for your conferences and podcast conversations. So lots of services there. And then I'm also a wellness person. I believe in health and wellness and natural healing modalities. I'm a yoga teacher. I'm a certified yoga teacher. I'm a certified Reiki practitioner. I'm a sound healer, merging my sound engineering with my healing. And I'm also a doula. I am a birth doula, and I'm going on to specialize in pregnancy loss and postpartum. I'm here to help with the hard stuff. And that's these are the projects and soon to be farming.
Soon to be far, we're claiming that.
Yes.
So Nana could also be a resource if you want to purchase land and you need some guidance regarding that. She's right now currently in Ghana.
It doesn't look like I'm in Ghana. I could be anywhere, but truly I'm in Ghana.
She's in Ghana, so she's on the ground getting her ducks in a row to finish her land purchase and things like that. So if you need that type of guidance, if you don't know anyone in Ghana, you can reach out to Nana and she will walk you through steps that you need to be considering, as well as help provide you with a team that can help you in any land purchase. She is who I called when my client was about to purchase land. And then I spoke with her father, and father was like, wait a minute, tell him to call me. There's plenty of opportunities. Do not go spending your money or wasting your money without speaking to me. So she's well connected and will be a great resource. So
Thank
Ghana,
you.
definitely. So Nana, it was such a pleasure having you. This was so fun.
Thank you, Mariam, my love.